All right, One Way Ratchet. Welcome back, Dan. Good to see you. We were able to enjoy an in-person viewing of White Lotus last night, which felt really good for all sorts of reasons.
It was
Good to
great.
have you back on the West Coast, Dan. Even though we're doing this from different corners of Marin County, we are still in the same county, which feels good. And very good to see you last night, my friend, in person.
It was great. I think I'm envisioning a one-way ratchet future where we do a lot more in person. When we'll have a whole studio build out.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
We'll have our home
Love
office.
Well, as
Big
I
screens.
said last night, in sort of mock frustration when my children kept coming in and interrupting, that I'm going to start spending Sunday nights at a local hotel so I can really just focus on the episode. Maybe
That's
not
a
a bad
business
idea.
expense. That's business travel right there. That is right. I mean, if we're
And
committed,
with the skeleton crew at the future IRS, like who's gonna sniff at that? You know.
that's right, people. Silver linings. Hey, touching on something a little, third rail in the show. You can't
That's
talk
right.
Trump on vacation.
That's right.
But the silver linings of when you've got the entire government, they're not sniffing around their business expenses.
So we are back with episode 3, season 3 of White Lotus. And as you know, our loyal listeners, we do an immediate take day after, less than 24 hours after the drop. Very little rehearsal. We did have the benefit last night of being in person and did some downloading immediately after. So we're going to get right into it today. Super excited about today's episode. And God, let me just say, like, I love this show. I can't get enough. My wife and I have gone back and started watching season 1 from the beginning as like a amuse bouche to get us through to the next week's drop of season 3. And it feels really good. It's a universe I just want to be in. The Mike Whiteaverse is a place I want to live. I want to be the mayor of the Mike Whiteaverse. So many fun things to talk about. And yet, Dan, let me just say, your hot take last week was episode 2, Nothing Burger. How do you feel about episode 3? Let's get your hot take.
What a difference a week makes. This is my spicy hot take for this week. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is really growing on me.
Yep.
Starting with the intro. Now on third viewing, it is actually it's coming alive. It's got. I think we're both feeling it after a few drinks. That it becomes like a bit of a club track, sort of near the end, right?
Yep.
Look, it's a slow burn. I think you have to separate what you want going into a Sunday night, which is you just want a lot of things to happen.
Yep.
And then it can feel a little slow. There's no doubt. And you maybe want more things, more plot to happen.
Yep.
But that's not what the show is about. And frankly, it's what it's never really been about.
Right.
It's about character. It's about texture.
Right.
It's about the Mike Whiteaverse. I mean, this incredible universe, right? You just want to spend a day at any of these resorts.
Yeah.
Just swim underwater and just hear the sounds. And that's a lot more of what it's about. It's about character.
Yep. Yep.
And this, we'll get into it later about just what he's doing with the cinematography, with the sound design. It's just incredible. And so it is all growing on me. I love it.
And let me say, we both felt that, see, episode 1, sort of slow start. We knew that was coming. Episode 2, we both felt a little let down. Having said that, now having revisited season 1, not a whole hell of a lot happens in episodes 1, 2, and 3 of season 1. And so actually it's funny what one's mind does, because one thinks of like the intense culminating action, but all of that is really packed into the final episode and a half each prior season. And so going back, you realize that there's a lot of sort of laying of groundwork and building relationships and deepening character and planting seeds that'll be sown later. But when one thinks about a past season, it's like, oh, you remember the intensive action, but there's really incredible like recurring themes that happen in terms of like characters leaving and spirituality. I mean, this is like such a thematic wellspring for him. I mean, that he just layers and layers and layers. So I feel happy about where we are.
I totally agree, and I think you're right. When you think back of the previous seasons, like season one, you're doing the rewatch. How much was there just repetitive? Okay, the woke kids, totally out of step with the parents.
Yep.
Shane, tracking down the pineapple suite.
Yeah.
Armand like losing his sobriety. Like that was just spiraling. And
Yep.
it was getting uncomfortable. How many scenes of the same thing we were getting again and again?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, it all built to on paper some dramatic. It became pretty dramatic, but it took a while to get there. And I think we're definitely seeing that play out here.
It's funny. I think about it. So much storytelling, especially on prestige television, is like very linear. And I
Yes.
think the beauty of White Lotus is it's almost whirlpool-esque. Like you're going around and around and around and down the down this drain or up, however you want to think about it. But there's a lot of like a cyclical vibe to it. Like, wait, didn't we already see this? Hasn't this happened before? Oh, it's similar but different enough. And so, think about the number of dinner, even just in this season, the number of dinner table scenes with characters, like
Well, 'cause
endless.
you know
And you're
that's-
like, yeah,
Because that's all you do on vacation. You
right.
just eat.
And
You one meal into the next.
right. And at your current meal, you're planning your next meal.
But
what do we?
you know my rule on that. I'm
What's
a
that?
strict rule on that.
What's that?
You're not able to talk about any meal other than the most immediate next one.
I love
You
it.
can't
I love
you
it.
can't jump. Look, we're at lunch. You can't talk about tomorrow's dinner. It's just you got to have to have some semblance of order to this.
You gotta have some boundaries.
Drives me nuts. The ceaseless torrent of meals. Generally speaking, but especially on vacation. But I think the show does it. By the way, I know we have limited time. I said we jump right into the
Get right in. Okay.
yeah. First of all, I know did you have any other hot take before we start?
No, I mean, you and I had a good discussion last night about the value of being well versed in theories, unfolding theories about the season, and you have a different stance now than you did maybe like a week ago, which is interesting to me. One of the things that I noticed last night, like the season started with a body floating in the water, a death, as do all of the seasons. And so part of the game is like trying to figure out who that might be. And I think there was this really, really, sorry, hang on. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Am I good? Okay.
Yeah.
There was this very visually stunning and potentially foreshadowing moment where Belinda is being floated across the water by Porn Chai. And I want to maybe draw a line in the sand. I think Belinda's the one who takes the bullet. I think she's going to get wiped out this season. She comes in so hopeful. We love her. She's a sweet character. It would be classic Mike White to just rip her out from under us, I think. So that's my theory. And her son is visiting, like all of these things.
The stakes are high. We know that the son was concerned instantly. His instinct, right? Which you wouldn't normally. I feel like in some ways, if you just hear gunshots in the distance, you don't like immediately think, "Oh my God, my mom." I don't know. It felt like it was very particular, right? But to my knowledge, other than whatever quest that Goggins is on, she's the only one who definitely there's someone out to kill. That, as far as we know, like someone has a motive, a very clear motive in offing her, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're referring to Gary.
Should we start with that one? Because I think that's in the in the Mike Whiteverse that this is the plot line that goes through all three seasons, and I found a couple things unique about it in this one. One is we got a lot of exposition. We just the characters talking about the backstory, which we don't normally get in Mike White because you don't really need it.
Yeah,
but I feel like now he's onto something a little different now with that story.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit more linear. It's a little bit more like, okay, we connected the dots of season 1, season 2. Now it's playing out now with Greg/Gary, recognize Belinda clearly. She recognizes him. Like the jig is up a little bit. And there's going to be repercussions of that. But it feels, I don't know if you feel this way, but it feels a little different than what else is going on at White Lotus.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, we talked a little bit about this last night. It is more exposition. It is more And as soon as we get into exposition, it starts to feel a little. It sort of takes me out of the universe for a minute.
Yes,
It's
totally.
like, oh, they're doing this for the audience members to remind them, and I bristle a little bit at that. Having said that, though, it's pretty effective. Like the Gary, Greg, Belinda sort of thing. And the other thing that moment does is it puts to bed one of the myths that was or one of the predictions that was floating in the internet is like, oh, this could be a prequel. And we now know it's not a prequel, so you can check that off the list.
For sure. Yeah. Which goes back to the theory crafting. Oh, well, that was pointless. Right. Yeah. Nice. I invested like a couple minutes of my life, actually, like
that you won't get back.
You'll never get that back. No.
Good.
It is the okay. So the Greg Gary of it all, though, man, that dinner, another awkward dinner. Guy, just please, Gary, say something.
Right.
Please. I mean, do us a favor.
That guy's probably had fewer than 20 words the whole season so far.
It's brutal.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe fewer than 10 words.
I mean, I do think there'll be payoff with that. I mean, clearly, I don't know whether he's just this internal struggle or it's guilt or what. I don't. Hard to know what with this guy.
Who knows?
Right. He's a good actor. I mean, I think we're gonna get more out of him.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
we talked a couple of weeks ago about like the Chekhov gun. Like you don't put a gun in a scene unless you plan on firing it. Gary has now been in every season and has played a pretty critical role in each of the two preceding seasons. So now we have him, and I would say he was sort of a peripheral character before.
Yeah.
He was only connected to McWad. What's her first name? Stifler's mom. Tanya McWad. Like, by the way,
what a name.
Let me just put a pin in that for a sec. The names are just incredible. McWad. Like, what? It's unbelievable. But what I was going to say is in this season, the webs are a little bit more complicated. Like he's connected with this French Canadian woman who's connected to Rick Hatchett and Chelsea, his girlfriend, but he's also connected to Belinda. So there's like all of a sudden now he's more at play in the landscape of the universe that we're talking. He's not just like this extra thing. He's
right,
like actually entwined. He's entwined in a way. And there's history with him where we don't have history of any of these other characters except Belinda.
Yeah, and absolutely. So, it sounds like there's going to be more overlap, right, with the people go on the boat next episode, which I can't wait.
By the way, if you find yourself in a Mike White show, don't get on the boat. Like, don't go on the boat. Just like it never is good, right?
Yeah,
it's never good.
Yeah,
stay off the boat.
Stay
off the boat.
Well, it sounds like Rick and Chelsea are going on the boat. The Rick, I think we got a lot of value from Rick. I mean, Rick's a character who is clearly evolving in front of us. I mean, he came off, I think super pissed off, just hard to read. I think we're learning more about him. I think his backstory is becoming a little bit more compelling. I mean, it does feel like he's on this revenge arc in some ways, right? Finding this guy in Bangkok.
I think there's a couple levels, a couple of things happening at once on several levels. Like one, there's this like impulsivity about the guy, and this like impulsivity that borders on danger. Like obviously the danger of releasing the venomous snakes, and then Chelsea gets bit by a cobra, has to get rushed to the hospital. Like that's one level. And I think there's a sensitivity to him that we're meant to take away from that too. Sort of like in his most tweaked out moment, his inclination is to like free these things. And there's this comment about evil, and he's like, isn't, she's like, well, the snake, Chelsea says, well, snakes are evil, and he says, well, yeah, but isn't like locking them up going to make them more evil? And it's like you wonder a lot about this guy because he's certainly a complicated character. We don't know a ton about him, but we get a sense that there's like a very dark past. He even admits to the therapist, like, I've done a lot of really bad things. And then, and so this like empathy he has for these venomous cobras, like letting them free. So that's an interesting bit of characterization we get from that, like, frankly, like sort of a funny scene too. I mean, he's like in this odd like Cobra show, and he's got this freak out, and anybody who's ever been in that situation, like, they do that really well. Like, they zoomed in, the sweat beads, he's like freaking, and he just has to get out of there, and he wants to let the snakes out of there too. It's like a very good send up of that sort of experience.
Oh, it nailed it. And but were you getting? And speaking of evil, because she mentioned later, okay, snakes are evil. Did you read the Bible? Were you getting a Garden of Eden? I mean, there's clearly. I think Mike White grew up in a pretty religious family. I remember some pod, let's do a while ago, one of the earlier seasons. So there's like all this religious symbolism going on through the show, right? So we got a lot of snakes. I mean, we had snakes from before. The snake. Whatever choker, jewelry from the robbery, and but clearly this is pretty. I mean, this was very on the nose with the snakes and setting them free, but in the context of this beautiful Garden of Eden is what this place looks like.
Well, I think it's there, and Dan, I think it's a good point, because remember episode 1, you have the forbidden fruit, that tree that has the fruit on the ground, the pong pong tree, like don't eat it. It's gonna, it's poisonous, it's toxic. So you have a lot of, I think, biblical and specifically like Edenic references going on, like temptation, fallibility, choice, but like what comes with choice and what comes with making the wrong choice. Like, you have a lot of that set up in here, and this sort of fall from grace, fall from sort of a perfect state of being. Like, all of these characters are deeply flawed. So it's like taking all the flawed people and putting them back into Eden and seeing what happens on take 2. You know what I mean? Are you still going to eat the apple? Like, what's going to happen with the snake and all of that stuff? So I think it's a pretty clever thing he does, and it's not heavy-handed in any way, but it's like enough that you're like, oh, this could be a thing, and this is the thing. But you're right; it's the most Eden-like setting we've had. Like, I went back and, I'm watching the Hawaii episode. Obviously lush, but not nearly as lush as Thailand, and Italy is like not lush at all. It's like very sun-baked, barren, Mediterranean type of thing. So, I think there's really a fairly heavy sort of Eden. And then, the dream that Mrs. Ratliff has at the opening, like the flood, like getting flooded by this water. I mean, it's a tsunami, but it's this sort of sense of water taking over everything. And
that's a good one. That's another. So this is like
there's a lot in there.
There's a lot going there. Well, let's. I just want to say one last thing, and then we'll switch to the Ratliffs. It was great to see Goggins just doing Goggins things. He
was great. He won the episode for me.
Yeah. Just his, first of all, just going back to earlier in the show when he, you got a real glimpse of, okay, what is this guy really like? When he's not sulking, right? When he puts on that maneuver on the resort owner at breakfast, whatever. And just laying on that charm, right?
Charming.
Oh God, it was great to see. It was like, thank you, Goggins. You are here now. You're welcome.
Yeah.
You've shown
welcome.
Up. Yeah,
it's so true. All right, could you name like one or two favorite scenes from last night?
Yeah. So that I think one of the greatest lines in television history. This was a line that ranks up there with In Succession, with Greg and Tom. It's just like that level of was when Saxon starts talking to Chloe at the pool, and she just looks over and said, "I heard you're a douche."
Oh my God!
It just his response, his like slow chewing gum, and just like that like Tom Cruise, like peak Tom Cruise, like cocky grin. It was perfection.
I agree. Like, just kudos, like, to just drop that line, and yet she's still super flirtatious.
Oh, it was perfect because it's like so meta. It's like it's like, okay, breaking down the fourth wall a little wink to the audience. Like, you're right. She's saying what we all know, but at the same time, right? She's also being super flirty. Like, they're totally gonna hook up next episode. I feel like. I mean, I feel like that's this season. feel.
I mean, she's invited them on the boat, and it's
Yeah.
funny. You don't know she's invited them on the boat until the next day at dinner. Saxon says, "Oh, guys, I got us an invitation to go on this boat ride with these super rich people." And Parker Posey's like, "Well, are they good people? Not all good people. Not all rich people are good people." And Piper's like, "Most rich people are bad people." That was a great little like sparring. I mean, any Parker Posey scene is pretty incredible. Just the way she's like so good at taking down her, just cutting right to the heart of what's going on. And
she is just murdering line after line. Literally everything that comes out of her mouth is memorable. It's incredible. The whole Ratliffs, all of them are compelling characters, and that's just that whole the downward spiral, the turning of the screw.
Mm-hmm.
I just think this whole now we're seeing he is losing it, right? And he is now doing drugs. I mean, he's famously said, "I don't do drugs." There was a drug through line in this episode.
Yep.
I think comparing Goggins, little Quest, and now Ratliff, and clearly he is he is on the edge, right? He is losing it, and I think there's this great. So you mentioned the tsunami, and this all ties in with I think all the characters that there is this tsunami looming for all of them. There's a reckoning. It's coming. Some recognize it more clearly than others. I think Tim clearly sees this thing coming, and they in the show they showed that one guy on the beach in Lochlan's video, and he didn't even run from it. He just like I guess gave into it, right?
Yeah.
And I think Parker Posey in her dream at the beginning also, she was just sort of
she walks towards it.
Yeah, and sort of embracing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think are we seeing Tim or Timothy? Is he sort of embracing now this maybe he's going to have to go on the run or what to go off the grid?
Yeah. It's a good question.
We'll see.
I think, on this note, I think one of my favorite scenes was the Tim convincing his family to all do away with their phones, even though he was like the biggest opponent of that the day before or 2 days before. And I think it's very interesting because like the mom and Piper and Lochlan were sort of like, yeah, we'll give up our phones. It's fine. And then Tim was like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And so Saxon sort of followed suit. And then here, Tim is the one then convincing everybody that they ought to do it, but it's very self-serving, of course. It's so that the office can't get in touch with Saxon, let him know. And then I almost think there's this moment of like, as you said, just giving over to it. It's like me being up all night trying to deal with the lawyers and deal with the calls. Like I'm screwed, and I might as well just sort of like give over to it and maybe enjoy or try to enjoy or at least drug myself through the next few days until the reality sets in. But as soon as he gets rid of his phone, if you notice, he's basically asleep for the rest of the episode. Like as soon as he gives up his phone, he's like done he has zero waking moments for the rest of the episode. Which is really interesting. And
that is,
I think it's almost this just like fully giving up to fate at this point. Because he's obviously a controlling like business titan, wants to control everything. Here is something he's confronted with over which he has zero control. And given the time zone difference, like can basically not even stay abreast of. And so he is like just completely ceding control to this broader universal inclination that ultimately we imagine will take him out. But that to me was a super powerful scene because he's like ostensibly doing it for his family and wanting to reconnect, but he's doing it so that his kid doesn't find out. But maybe deep down,
it's so self-serving, and
you
just see him making progressively worse decisions. Right? That's a hallmark of this downward spiral, right? It's you're not making the best rational wait if you're in a hole, stop digging. No, you are you're throwing gasoline on it.
Yep. That's right.
Oh, and speaking of fire, actually, I made a note. This whole intersection of dreams, snakes, and actually fire imagery. Do you remember they were talking at breakfast about dreams, and Parker Posey had mentioned that she was, had this dream. Although she was, did you notice? She was. I don't think she was being honest with the actual dream to her family. Right.
Remind me.
She really downplayed it. I mean, she had this like horrible, tsunami. She like a drowning type dream.
Mm-hmm.
But she downplayed it. She like, it was, we were all there. The house was there. Sort of like playing up the better. But I guess you don't always remember your dreams clearly either.
Yeah, but that's not nothing. Like that. That's something.
Right. It's like the audience knew better what she was saying. But Saxon picked up on the dream thing, and it's like, well, everyone dreams about snakes and fire.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Right.
And then it's like snakes. Okay, well, snakes were a theme of the episode, and then I noticed that on rewatch, and then near the end, especially at the barbecue, tons of fire imagery.
Yeah.
And it's all this goes back to me, which is just why I'm really liking the show more and more after this sort of lukewarm start. It's just all of that is there. There is so much there. You really have to carefully watch. Again, the second viewing makes all the difference because all the pressure's off. The first time you watch, you're just barely paying attention. You want to you don't want to miss anything. But it's really hard to see, all the things that are going on and the how it all connects.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Let's talk about the three friends for a minute.
One prediction we made.
Yeah. Girls Gone Wild. We made a prediction last week about how, the one friend, the blonde woman from Texas, last name Bohr, which is a great name, how she was the one who had been spared being at the sort of target of the friends talking, and yet this week it comes to fruition that they sort of pile on her. So she is up until last night, she was the one who had been like privy to all of the shit talking, and then
she was the nexus of all shit talk. It's all
and we sort of talked. Well, she's next to be at the heart of the shit. The recipient of the shit talking, I should say. And of course, that played out last night relative to her politics and living in Texas and going to church and voting for Trump, which is super interesting. And I found myself thinking, this obviously filmed long before Trump was reelected. So in time, this is at some point, during his first administration, or is it meant to be right after, or does it not matter? Maybe it doesn't matter at all. But it's just interesting, I thought.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I didn't think about that. You're right. This had to be filmed, unless they just threw in they quickly did that one scene post election.
Interesting. I would be surprised if they did that. I bet they threw it in knowing like, all right, whatever happens in the next election cycle, this is still going to resonate.
It's exactly. You're right. You're right.
And like how prescient, and how crazy that, Trump's elected, and then a few months later, this episode drops where they're like that conversation could have happened today, but it also could have happened any time. You know what I mean? It's like still totally relevant.
Yep.
Right now, like people are
smart.
still having those very same conversations about friends or family who voted in a way that they didn't agree with, but like really specific to that one candidate. It's just I thought it was like really interesting how that played out. And then she's now feeling, of course, on the outs, and they're so good visually about suggesting distance and like, she now, it makes it now look like her room is like way far away from the other two. It's pretty incredible how they do that, and how they sort of bring you back to these familiar moments, but twist them just enough that it keeps it interesting and you learn more about the characters. So like, what's going to happen with those three? I mean, we have this funny sort of thing going on with the Russian, Reiki specialist, Valentin.
Well, let's pause on him for 1 second.
Yeah.
I think Mike White is playing with something with him. I think there's just something off about him.
Totally.
and I don't know what it is.
I don't think
It's
he's
probably-
Russian. I don't think he's Russian.
When they asked him, they invest again in a careful show like this. Every line of dialogue is likely there for a reason. That whole thing about where are you from? I can't say it.
Vladivostok or whatever,
Vladivostok. Which I remember from the game of Risk, right? Wasn't that one of the that was the Far Eastern?
It's a big Russian port
Yeah.
town. It's like
Yeah.
super important.
You know, he went through the trouble of putting a gigantic, very visible tattoo of this town on his leg. And I'm
Right.
thinking, okay, you're overplaying your hand, Valentine.
Yeah.
You're going too far, right, with this.
Right.
To explain to the world, see, I am from here. Look, it's right on my leg,
Totally.
What did I do there? Oh, I see, I worked in the ports. It's a port city,
And he has not a hint of a Russian accent.
There's no Russian accent. And the whole thing with it did frame it. Okay, so I guess what she said, you must have gotten out right before the war. Well, that makes it right now. That makes it contemporaneous with now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think it's we just had the third year anniversary of the start of the Ukraine war.
That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know that there'll be a gigantic payoff. He seems like a very minor character, but clearly there's more than meets the eye with this guy.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating, and there's a thread. We talked about this before, but like the paying vacationing clients and the staff, like such a delta, such a gap between those people and how they live, and yet their lives are so intimately intertwined. In such an interesting way. There's this great line from Armand in season 1 where he's coaching up one of the new trainees, and he's like, we want to be seen but not remembered. It's like kabuki theater. He's like, you want them to have the impression of you but not know you, and there's something like so dehumanizing about that.
Oh my God,
and yet
it's so good.
and it's how these high end places function.
It's how, if you pay attention to the show does a really good job of this. They focus a lot. All these little transition shots and these little filler shots, they often focus on the staff doing the staff things, gardening, setting a table, linens, whatever. But it's doing exactly what Armand said. It's not focusing on the person. It's like the role. It's the role of the staff is to make this all work. They're all the people making it work so that the rich Americans can come and just and be the star of the show, right? When meanwhile it's all the hard work of all these other people make everything happen for not just for White Lotus, for the world.
Right. So interestingly, in season 1 at least, and I think in season 2, there's a pretty robust sort of story of conflict amongst the staff people. Like there's a full story there. So like with Armand, he's like wrestling with his sobriety. He's having trouble kowtowing to these asshole American clients. That's like a struggle for him. And, Belinda trying to, on the one hand, make her dream of opening her own spa come true, but on the other hand, feeling like a little bit used by Tanya McWad. I don't know in this scene. I guess maybe the Guy Talk Mook relationship could be sort of the thing that is the version of that here, but I'm not sure there's quite as much of that here. Like we're more focused on solely on the vacationers in this one, it seems.
You're right, but I do think that the whole Guy Talk Mook and then the 3 bodyguards, that's percolating.
Yeah, something's going to come
for sure. Something more is happening there. The very enigmatic character to me, who's gotten a little bit of screen time, and I'm more perplexed with every scene, is the hotel manager.
Yeah, Fabian.
Now, in season 1 was the greatest hotel manager role of all time. With Armand was just, it's just a jaw-dropping performance.
And by the way, it gets better each time. Like I said, we're rewatching it. It's pure gold. He is one of the great characters of all time. His facial expressions, the way he's able to act without even speaking, like just based on his like eyebrows and mustache alone, he communicates volumes with the looks he gives. So we're never going to get we're never going to get a hotel manager in all of cinematic history, past, present, future,
No.
that comes close to Armand. So let's just like say that out of the gate. No one will ever be Armand. Fabian, I find very much, he reminds me of like the Uriah Heep from, is it David Copperfield? I think it's David Copperfield, the Dickens novel, or it could be Oliver Twist, or it could be Great Expectations.
Even on TV show reviews, you just can't stop, won't stop. Literary references.
No, but there's this great literary character, Uriah Heep, and he's this like mealy, wormy, sort of like smarmy, like character, and I'm like, man, Fabian is that. I mean, he's pretty pathetic. He's like sort of mean to his underlings, but completely obsequious to Sritala or whatever her name is. He's like practicing how to say her name. He's trying to like get her to listen to his singing and get him to. So like, what is going on with him? What's going to come of him? Do you have any predictions?
Yeah, I hope that Michael White gets bored with him and he just sort of goes away. He just recedes into the background and nothing happens. That's my hope. Because we got enough. I mean, I'm so much more invested in the Rick and Chelsea and all the Ratliffs.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we did. And in season 2, we had a great hotel manager, the lesbian Italian woman.
She was
amazing.
Memorable. Yeah, no, her, again, a lot going on with her facial. I mean, there was so much. These were such rich performances, the managers in 1 and 2.
Right. And so Fabian isn't bringing the heat. He's just bringing like annoyance. But then I'm like, well, maybe this is a good setup for something bigger later. Like he snaps or something goes on. But maybe not. It might be that that's who he is. And Mike White realized he could never out Armand. And so why even try?
Exactly. Why bother?
Why bother?
So a couple more like general themes that I just saw. And again, on rewatch, you have a little bit more time to notice these things. But there was this through line of inversion, or I should say, things being, as we love to say, topsy turvy, frippery. There was a great scene. These little transition scenes, they just add so much to me. Of the guy swimming underwater, but he was at the top of the screen, as if the water were like it was like upside down, right? And you saw the reflection.
And the reflection going the opposite way.
Yeah. And then similarly, when the Girls Gone Wild are at yoga and they're doing downward dog, it was a great scene where it was great because it's like super relatable. They're sort of joking with each other with Fabian and everything, or not Fabian. I'm sorry,
Valentine.
But then all of a sudden the cameras flip so that they're right side up on screen, even though we know they're doing the downward dog. And again, it's one of those things. Again, I don't have a great theory as to why, other than I just noticed these things, and they're not there by accident.
No, that's right. And I think one part of it is certainly just the value that Mike White clearly places on aesthetics.
Yes.
He's not just there to tell a story; he's there to sort of bring you into a visual world. And those choices just add layers to that, right? So that's like, for me, the first thing.
Definitely.
Is just like his visual storytelling is absolutely gorgeous. And then the next layer is potentially just this idea of things being all out of whack. And like we never quite know which end is up. Because in that scene of yoga, it's like the only tip off that they're actually upside down is their ponytails are sort of like sticking straight up.
Exactly.
But otherwise they could just be sitting up in a chair. It's a pretty I mean, it's obviously a choice. And I think a big part of it is just the aesthetics of the thing. And then another part is probably just, we don't know quite which way is up. And, there's that scene with Tim Ratliff, like Ratliff passed out on the bed and we're like, wait, is he lying down? Is he sitting up in his mouth? There's so many like little subtle
That was another one.
There
was another scene of him in the shower where it's sort of it was an upward camera angle of the water coming down. It was just, again, it was just disorienting.
Yeah.
And you're right. You said something earlier that now it is related with this sort of swirling storytelling, or the notion. By the way, all the water in previous seasons, the waves. Yeah. It is this sort of this swirl,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they are all in it.
I love it.
I
It's
love
so good.
this. The other thing, I just think when you go back on any rewatch, the sound design continues to amaze me.
Yeah.
It is just
Incredible.
the detail, the whether it's a song, an amazing song choice, but also just the natural elements like the
Mm-hmm.
monkey sounds or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they don't get enough credit for that. All back
Well,
to the texture in the Mike Whiteverse of it.
yeah, and we start, if memory serves, this episode last night starts with the dream sequence of what's Parker Posey's character's name?
Is it
Uh,
Victoria Ratliff?
yeah, I think that's right. Mrs. Ratliff, we'll call her, until we confirm her first name. Dream sequence of her being sort of like subsumed by this tsunami while her son Lochlan is sitting on the beach with two
Lady
uh,
Boys
lady boys watching, and
with
then we cut
his bad posture.
exactly, and then we cut directly to um, the scene of Tim Ratliff on the porch in a monsoon rain, and like that sound of water just sort of continues out of the dream and into the real moment, and Parker Posey's character is like listening as he's having this very heated, intense conversation in the rain. And it's a that seamlessness of like the sound of the water and the tsunami into the rainstorm is just like so well done, and it helps create that sort of visual audio effect that I think they're trying to achieve. And one of the questions I have though is like, if we're talking at the end here about like what do we think is going to come next, do you have any predictions? Do you have ideas? Do you have theories? Have you read theories? Like what's on your mind?
I think we need to add either a section or just an entire pod on the theory crafting, because I made the decision. I talked to my daughter and a couple of her friends who are huge fans of the show, and they told me like, look, on TikTok and just in the world right now, there are just all these theories about the show.
Yeah.
And they're widely known among people, and especially who are active on social media, which I'm not. And so I made the decision like, look, if I'm going to do this, if we're going to be doing this, I need to take it seriously, and that means I have to be aware of these things. I have to be able to talk about them. But I also don't want they can be very spoilery. So I just think in fairness to listeners and everything that maybe we section that off. Right.
And we do a whole episode on theories.
Yeah. Maybe later this week, even because I think we want to do it soon, because then I think we do need to do it actually before the next episode, because then there's payoff into seeing how this play out. We can sort of track them.
I love that.
Right.
Well, let's do that. Let's do a quick deep dive later this week on like the top 5 theories.
Perfect.
And then we can sort of like debate them and then see how they pan out.
Yeah. Well, so putting that aside, just of what, what we know within the 4 walls of the show so far is the walls are closing in. I think the tsunami imagery is really going to play out. I think this whole notion of being swallowed whole, it goes back to the opening tapestry where it's sea monsters swallowing people whole.
Yep.
There's, there is, that's very obvious. So, okay, I don't mind that it's been a slow burn till now. Mm-hmm. I do think we are setting ourselves up for success in that. I do think a lot is going to happen between now and the end of the season. And I did look it up. There are 8 episodes. So season 1 was
most ever.
Yeah, was 7. I guess season 2 was 6. Now we get 8. Thank God. Okay, if we were halfway done, if it was 6, I would be having a different.
You'd be panicking.
I'd be freaking out right now. Yeah. No, I think with we're not even at the halfway point, and apparently the trailer for the next episode looks like an absolute banger.
So you watched it?
No, I heard. I've tried not to watch the trailers.
Okay.
Yeah. This is dumb. I'll probably end up watching. I'm just going to succumb to the whole thing and do it all. But no. But my daughter told me that the trailer for the next episode looks bananas.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe you watch the trailer and I won't, and we'll compare.
Okay,
notes.
that's fair. Well, what do you think? So you're clean on this. Your hands are clean. Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to find out something more about Rick Rick's connection to the owner. We've talked about that before. He gave us a little more information last night to his therapist. And by the way, the therapist thing is interesting, right? Because you have this sort of this veil of confidentiality, and yet we're privy to it. So he's like unloading to his therapist.
Do you still believe him, or you were skeptical of his story?
I was skeptical, and he's added some interesting information. So in the first episode, he says, my mom died when I was young of a drug overdose, and my dad died like before I really knew him, I think is what he said.
Before he was born.
And then, so then last night he says, my father was an amazing man, but unfortunately he was murdered like when I was young. And so it's like, well, what is it? Did he die before you were born? Was he a great man that you knew that was murdered? So I believe him even less actually now. And there's something that is propelling him, obviously, to follow Sritala or whatever her name is to Bangkok and potentially find Jim Henninger or whatever, the owner. And I think, one maybe far-flung prediction is like Jim actually is his father, long lost, and impregnated his mom who died, and he's holding on to this anger about that, and also wants a cut of the huge fortune that Jim has. Like that I say far-flung, like that actually wouldn't be that crazy a theory. Or potentially, maybe his father was killed in some sort of bad business deal with Jim or something like that. But there is a real anger towards those two, and there's like no other motivation for it.
Yeah. Well, it's also you're spot on and all that. He's clearly has some trauma, and I think it's parent related. It's just I think we have to take some of that at his word. It doesn't feel right though for a 50-year-old guy to be so torn about the father he never knew for his entire life, who was dead before he was born.
Right.
It would make a lot more sense if this happened later in his life, even in adolescence, right?
Right.
But either way, it doesn't mean, because he said something like, and then his father was murdered, and I can't get my life back. Life back? Well, it wasn't like he was taken from you. You never had him.
Right.
I don't know. There's something. There is just something, and I think they're being. Well, maybe we'll learn more about it. I think. Well, we're going to have to learn more whatever happens in Bangkok eventually, or with
that's right.
the resort owner.
That's right. So does he go to Bangkok, or does he go on the boat, or is he able to do both? It seems like they're both lining up for the same night.
Yeah, good question. It's all about like the tomorrow on the show, right? He was going to go to Bangkok.
Right. He's going to go to Bangkok tomorrow, and tomorrow's the full moon boat ride.
No. We need as many characters as possible on this boat. This is, I think,
boat.
Yeah,
we know the boat is going to be bananas.
Like you said, when on White Lotus, when people are going on boats, something happens.
Yeah, it's always bad. It's always bad. Except here's the exception: when the youngest brother in the Mossbacker family in the Hawaii trip starts to go on those canoe boat rides with the native Hawaiians.
Yep,
like that's actually a rebirth moment for him. He's finally like away from his technology. He's appreciating nature. He's like feeling good about himself. That's maybe an exception. So maybe, but not all. And Tanya McWad takes her mom's ashes out on a boat.
Oh, but that
goes very wrong
with Shane on the same boat.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right though. The canoe, the canoe exception. You're right. That was the best thing that happened to any character in the history of the show. Was his redemption arc, with the natives. But there's so all the where this is going though. He's teeing up so much death imagery, too, just everywhere. Right. I mean, people are lying in a death state all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you notice that like Parker Posey, like every other scene, it's either her sleeping or on a massage table, or just people or laying in the water, like Belinda.
Mm-hmm.
I think every character has had that sort of. We've seen that character like laying in the deathly, stillness.
You're right.
Multiple times.
I think Goggins is one of the few characters who hasn't, other than the time he's like sitting up reading in bed, and then she comes in and they get it on. I don't know if he's ever been horizontal the whole thing. Like he's sort of manic almost. He's always moving and always propelling himself through space, but pretty much every other character has some fairly significant lie down moments, which is really interesting. Yeah, but like, how do the Ratliffs get out of this? You know, I mean, one thing I'm pretty certain of is he's not going to get a call saying, "Hey, it turns out like you've been exonerated."
False alarm.
False alarm. Nothing's wrong. Like we're all good. You can not worry about this. Like we know that's not going to happen. So
No.
then
when the FBI shows up with a warrant to your place of work, the game is already over.
It's not good. And so, but what is what are the casualties there? Like what does this do? It wipes out the family financially. They are a house built on this sort of sense of wealth and sense of themselves through their wealth, right?
Oh, Trent, you need to be hyper vigilant.
Exactly.
Just another Parker pose. You're like, no, right. This whole the status, the wealth that comes with it, the class, the whole. That's the comeuppance. Whether the tsunami, whether it's actual physical peril, like someone's going to die, which somebody is.
Yep.
But just in their own lives, there's a reckoning for everyone coming.
Okay, here's something I just sort of was thinking of this morning as I was thinking of last night's episode, and then also, with the heavy-handed tsunami imagery. I'm sure you watched footage of the Thailand tsunami when it happened, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that one always sees is people running away from the water. Right? Like running away, with the exception of the clip that Lochlan showed on his iPad. If you think about episode 1 opening moment, you have a very similar image of everybody like rushing away from the water through the hotel, like that way. Like we know there are bullets because a bullet comes through and breaks the glass where that Belinda's son is having his therapy, but it's really interesting that like there's clearly a visual cue there, or a visual reference to people rushing away from a tsunami. I mean, I guess you could just say, oh no, they're just running away from gunshots, but like, I don't know. It looks so similar if you go back and watch episode 1, like the way they're running, it's like running from the water into the hills to get away.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so, I like, obviously, or maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but we're given every reason to think that there is a shootout, there are gunshots. And you brought up a great theory last night about a monkey getting hold of a gun, given the sporadic.
Whoa. Save that.
We'll save that for our theories.
Save that for the theory pod.
Teaser. That's a teaser for people who've hung in with us for an hour.
If you made it,
teaser.
That's
right. If you made it this far,
you can handle it. Yes.
So I don't know. I think my fear is like Belinda's on the chopping block. I mean, the last night's episode ends with her sitting in her room being like, "What's that?" And she hears a noise. And like, we don't know what that is. It ends. So I think I worry for her. I think the Ratliffs are going to sort of implode under their own mistakes, or at least most of them. I imagine Piper might come out like pretty unscathed, just because she's like buying into this sort of Eastern religion, Buddhism, like seems authentic.
What if
and
she,
wanting to.
Yeah, she just can't waltz right into the monastery though and get the interview.
Right.
Apparently,
right.
I don't know where that's going.
She's got her interview at 2:30 on Friday, so probably episode 5. Maybe that's going to come to fruition.
That's got to tie in something.
It's and there's like a meta comment here too about sort of like capitalism for me, and like capitalism, tourism. Global financial market. Like even the fucking monk at this monastery is working on an MacBook. And it's like there's nothing is sort of safe or sacred. And this monk, like I was like laughing at this idea of a monk running his calendar through like Google Calendar. You know what I mean? It's just. And there's got to be something to that. This whole like commentary on the fact that like even the farthest flung, most beautiful, pristine corners of the world, we have like completely infiltrated with capitalism and tourism and global economy, and like there's no safe place anymore from that. And I think there's like a meta comment about that. I think
that's a big part of the whole show for Mike White is really, especially showing that the typical American privileged, just cluelessness.
Yeah.
As to other people, other cultures, like just even the existence of these other people, all the people who make it all happen, right? In their stories and everything. So, and I think there was a little bit of that with Piper in her just sort of cluelessly hoping that, oh, can I just get an interview with the whatever, I forget who it was that she needs.
Right.
Yeah. No, you should have set that up in advance. I think I'm with your old man on this one. We're flying around the world. Yeah. You want to make sure you have that locked down.
So funny. And, you know, she's getting something out of it, right? She's trying to finish her thesis. So it's not just like pure altruism. And she's like trying to get something out of it. Oh, no.
And she's like trying to get an internship there or something, or some post-grad.
Yeah, that's right.
No, she's totally
right.
Self-interested.
So they're all evil. It's going to be great. I can't wait to see how it unfolds.
Okay, so great recap of just we're getting there. I mean, I think again the turning of the screw, it's all happening. I can't wait, and let's get the theory show in the books later this week.
Can you supply the theories? I would love to go into it with like you bring the theories up and just go through them, and I go and I respond without having seen them.
I love it.
That
Perfect.
Could be a fun setup.
You're the audience surrogate, right? Who hasn't heard it yet? Yeah. Okay.
Let's do that because you've already read them. So let's do it that way. We'll do it later this week. It'll be a shorter episode. We'll just sort of bang out a couple quick hits.
Perfect.
All right, Dan.
Great stuff.
Thanks to our listeners and viewers. Report back later this week with the Theories and Prophecies edition.
Looking forward to it. All right, man.
All right.
See you next time.
Adios. Bye.
Later.